First things first, you need some fresh bear fat. I trimmed this fat off of a bear that I recently shot in Arizona. When rendering the bear fat, I like to freeze it first. If you try to work with the fat at room temperature, it will usually be a sticky, gooey mess and just generally difficult to work with. I recommend trimming all the fat off of your bear and just freezing it in big chunks like you see here. Once it's frozen solid, you can reduce it down into smaller chunks and eventually these little 1 inch by 1 inch squares. You can keep the cubes larger if you want, but I've found that the larger the pieces, the longer it takes for the fat to render down into oil form. Now we're preparing this bear fat for table fare. In my household, we use bear grease for frying potatoes, eggs, searing meat on the flat top grill, and as an oil substitute for about any kind of baking. The rendering of bear fat has a long history with indigenous populations and later European settlers. They too used bear grease for cooking, but also as a water repellent on leather clothes and boots, lamp oil, and even medicinal needs. Since we're prepping this bear fat for the table, I want to make this fat as pure as I can. This is a good opportunity to trim away any remaining pieces of red meat, discard those, and pick out any stray bear hairs that snuck their way in. I tend to give the discarded pieces of gray colored fat or tiny pieces of meat to my backyard chickens. They love the stuff. Now that we've got the fat trimmed up pretty much how we want it, into small cubes and about as clean as it's gonna get, we can now toss it all into the crock pot. Put that little contraption on slow cook for say 8 to 12 hours and just forget about it. We'll come back and check on it regularly just to make sure nothing's getting scorched, but overall, the slow cooking process is going to allow that bear fat to render down into an oil. You'll notice that the fat renders into an oil every few hours. You can choose to pour it into jars every so often or just set it and forget it overnight and pour it in one big batch. Don't be a goofball like me and try to pour it in without a strainer. The easiest way to pour without making a mess is to pour into one big container and then pour the liquids through a strainer or cheesecloth. Keep those crispy bits for dog treats if you want, or give them to your chickens like we do. I'm convinced it makes them mightier backyard specimens. The consistency of the oil should just be like any other oil that you use. And the color, while still warm, should be this nice golden amber color. The oil, you'll notice, will lighten up a little bit as it reaches room temperature and then turns to a nice white color after it's refrigerated. After about 12 hours and not much effort at all, we have our finished product. We've got a few handfuls of cracklings that we use for animal treats, an example of the bear grease while it's still warm, and another at room temperature. And finally, a jar after the bear grease has been refrigerated. It's this white creamy color. I recommend storing your jars of rendered bear grease in the refrigerator, and it's going to last many months or longer. If you want to up your game a bit, put it into decorative jars and give it to your closest friends as Christmas gifts. Take care.